The only phrase I know how to describe our current situation right now is up shit creek without a paddle. Sandy things have gone from bad to far, far worse since last night, and to tell the truth, everyone now is scared out of their damn minds. Well, almost everyone, but I'll get to that in a minute. Before I say anything, let me again say thank you to those of you who commented on last night's post. Despite everything that has happened today, we managed to make some progress, and I can't help but think it was thanks to you all giving us some direction. So let me quickly answer a few things that you have brought up. First and foremost, as soon as I opened the laptop and saw the comment, I went and pulled one of the maps of the ship off the wall, looking to see if there is indeed any sort of chapel or religious, some gathering area for us to hole up in. Unfortunately, the Queen Elizabeth seems to never have had one built aboard her. So, no ideas out. Secondly, the reason why we set up base camp in the lounge is because it was the first place we reached when we came aboard. It's the place we know best after yesterday, though, and, especially with our current predicament, I'm beginning to think, moving to one or two adjoining cabins might be a better idea. So not as much room for anyone or anything to creep up on us. That being said, let me tell you what happened today. We were roused by the captain just after 10 in the morning. "Come on, Nate," he said softly to me, shaking my shoulder. "We've got work to do today." And he moved away to wake the others. For another minute, I simply lay there, staring up at the ornate ceiling high above our heads. The horrible mental images of the shadowy figures had followed me into my nightmares, and I dreamed of running down dark and seemingly endless hallways, the figures always just a step behind me. I shivered slightly as I remembered the voice welcoming me, welcoming all of us aboard. I attempted to force the image out of my head as I pulled myself from the sleeping bag and to my feet. So, once everyone was awake, we all quickly had breakfast before I broke out the computer to see what people had said, and I quickly scrolled down to the comments that I saw were there as the others came over. As much as I wanted to tell the others about what I'd seen yesterday, a small part of me whispered that none of them would believe me, especially after what Andrew, Spencer, and Will said they saw happen to me. If anything similar happens to me or anyone else, I'll tell them, but not until then. Everyone gathered around to read what you've been all suggested. I could tell to them it was like a lighthouse beacon, helping guide them to safety. I couldn't help but feel a small pang of disappointment flow through me as they again dismissed the ghost ship comments, even though I'd known it was coming. Apart from potentially the captain and me, nobody else had seen anything out of the ordinary. I shot a glance his way as he leaned in to read the screen. Like any trace of the fear I'd seen last night had been wiped away, replaced with his usual, calm, calculating expression. "Well, at least people seem to agree with my idea to find the key," he said finally, standing back up and seeming somewhat pleased.
Wyatt leaned in and pointed at another comment.
"Cap, what about this person's suggestion to move from the lounge to some of the cabins to sleep? It'd be a hell of a lot more comfortable than another night on the floor." The captain rubbed his beard, thinking, "They may have a point. I wasn't able to get much sleep last night. We'll move our stuff into some of the first class cabins." Just as the same as yesterday, we were paired off into two teams. The captain, Andrew, and Spencer would head off to the crew quarters to try and find the keys, while myself, Wyatt, Will, and Vinny would try and find any food we can add to our slowly dwindling store supplies.
I very much didn't want us splitting up again. Not after both what you all had said and what I'd experienced. But try as I might to say so to the captain, he remained steadfast.
We need to cover as much ground as possible. Me, he said, after we'd dumped our stuff into some adjoining cabins near the lounge. And with that, he turned and hustled the other two in his group away. I watched them go, saying a silent prayer for them to be safe before turning to the others. Well, which way do we go? Benny asked, gesturing to the many hallways that branched away from us. I looked down and studied the map of the ship for a moment. My eyes drifted past the maze of rooms and landing areas before settling on a large area near the stern of the ship. How about we start here at what looks like a restaurant called the Veranda Grill? The three men craned to look at the map. Sure, why not? Wyatt said, shrugging his shoulders. With our destination set, we turned and began heading aft.
Passing through the lounge, we found ourselves in more hallways that seemed to stretch on forever.
Man, they had a lot of cabins just in first class alone. Then he said, as we passed this small sitting area looking out onto the starboard side of the ship. And then he lowered his voice slightly. Hey, did any of you have anything happen to you yesterday? The question caused me to stop dead in my tracks. What do you mean weird? I asked. Everyone stopped now. Wyatt let out a soft groan. Oh, come on, Vin. Nothing. Weird happened yesterday. The captain said so, but I could tell he wasn't being completely honest. Will's brow furrowed.
What are you guys talking about? He took a step towards Vinny. Did something happen to you guys down in the engine room?
Wyatt let out another protest, but Vinny seemed to ignore him. I don't, man. All I know is we were down there working like crazy to get the boilers up and running when I looked over at the captain. He'd stopped in the middle of giving us directions. I had no idea what to do next. I saw the big man shiver slightly before continuing, but he had the creepiest expression on his face. It was like he'd been hypnotized or something. The lights were on, but no one was home. Then he just snapped out of it. He looked absolutely terrified for half a second, then seemed to remember what was happening and kept going. Wyatt cut in. That's because he didn't get much sleep last night. He literally told us that when you asked him what was up, I swear to God, Vinny, you're making a mountain out of a molehill with this dude. Vinny shot a slightly irritated stare at him before turning back to Will and me. I just need to know, did any of you have anything weird or unusual happen to you guys yesterday? I exchanged a glance with Will. His expression was that of a perfect poker face, but his eyes betrayed what raced behind them. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I debated whether to come clean about my experience, but Will spoke before I did. No, nothing like that. Nothing besides accidentally tripping over an overturned chair. I felt a wave of surprise shoot through me. The entire time I'd known Will, I'd never known him to deliberately lie. He was someone who always told the truth, even if it ended bad for him. Had hell did this side of him come from?
There, see, all is as well as it can be, Wyatt said triumphantly. Happy now, Ben. I saw him steady at faces for another moment before shrugging.
All right, guess it really was nothing. And with that, he turned and began walking down the hall again. I spared another glance at Will. but he simply shrugged at me and turned to follow them.
I stared after him for a minute, unable to move, until a familiar shiver shot up my spine, one that indicated I was being watched. I swung my head around, looking behind me back down the hallway. Nobody was there. Nobody I could see, anyways. Feeling another shiver pass through me, I turned and jogged to catch up to the others. We found a set of stairs that, according to the sign next to them, led down to the restaurant deck from where we were on the main deck. Heading down a few flights, we found ourselves on yet another landing. Will suddenly let out a small laugh and pointed. Hey, guys, check it out. Across the landing from us was what looked like a small booth. Glass and metal bars separated the person who sat inside from everyone. Outside, looking up, I saw a sign hanging over the window.
That must be where you drop off any paperwork you need to travel aboard, along with valuables you want locked in the ship's safe. Wyatt said,
He let out a laugh. You think there's anything valuable still in there? Joy, cash, shit like that? I turned to him, feeling a bit astonished. You're joking, right? He shrugged. Hey, we're alone on board here. If we took anything, I don't think anyone would know, he said, grinning slightly. Yeah, until the ship gets brought back to dock and the owners discover ship missing from there, dumbass. And he said in a displeased tone. Now it was Wyatt's turn to give him an irritated look. I was just kidding, jeez. He looked out at the floor. Killjoy, he muttered. For my part, I gave him a long look, then looked over at the purser's office again. I don't think it would be anyone on land who behistically stole anything. I thought, before anyone else could say anything, the radio let out a squawk. My heart momentarily began to thud in my chest. For a moment, I was terrified I'd hear the man's voice from it again. Instead, the elated voice of the captain came. Nate, we found the keys. They were hidden away in a desk in the captain's cabin. A feeling of relief washed over me, and I pulled the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbed it as I saw relieved smiles cross the others' faces. That's terrific, Cap. You want us to head straight up to the radio room? The man spoke again, a sharp burst of static masking his voice. Say again? Now the man's voice came in loud and negative, Nathan. We might still need some supplies. We don't know how long it'll take for anyone to reach us, and we're going to begin running low on food soon. Go check out the restaurants, and you were planning, and then come meet us. Wyatt's face fell with his words, but I saw the other two nod at me. Roger that, Cap. We'll try and be quick as we can, over and out. And with that, I clicked off. Come on, guys, this way, I said, pointing to a sign at the start of the left hallway. The four of us made our way down the hallway. A porthole stood open halfway down it, and as we passed it, the smell of the ocean filtered in. I slowed to take a deep breath of it, letting it invigorate me a bit, and froze. I didn't just see that. I did not just see that. I knew I had. As we passed the porthole, I shot a glance out, hoping to catch a quick glimpse of the relatively calm waters. And I caught a split-second glimpse of someone walking past it. It had been too quick to see anything besides a blur, but it had been enough. I felt the fear of yesterday return. Oh, shit.
Not again, man.
My heart raced in my chest and I felt a lump form in my throat. Hey, you all right, Nate?
The voice snapped me back, and I looked up to see the others had turned to look back at me. All of them wore confused expressions on their faces. I fought to find my voice for a second, then spoke, trying to sound calm. Yeah, sorry about that, guys, I said. Will cocked his head at me, giving me an odd look, but didn't say anything. Refusing the urge to look out the porthole again, I started walking, pushing past them to begin leading the way. Come on, let's go get this over with. For a moment, I heard nothing behind me. And then I heard the others follow.
Oh, freaking shitballs. Wyatt breathed out. That's... Whoa.
We stood at the entrance to the restaurant, next to a small sign that read, "Please wait here to be..."
And for my part, I couldn't blame him for such a reaction. Even after what just happened, I couldn't help but feel in awe of the expansive room in front of us. Like the rest of the ship, wooden paneling covered the walls. The only difference was that in here, squares and tiles of aquamarine had been indented into them. Some had ornate shapes, and across the room I saw a massive painting or stitching of what appeared to be a woman clad in ancient Greek or Roman clothing. Below her, 4 horses reared up as if to charge, while several men seemed to hold everything up in midair. Tables with expensive-looking tablecloths littered the room. The sea green upholstered chairs around them, almost inviting people to come and sit in them. This is shooting a glance to my right. I saw a huge grand piano sit against the far wall, and a huge aquamarine curtain covering what must be a window to the stern deck. I don't even want to imagine what it must cost to eat in here, Vinny said, causing everyone to laugh softly. You're not joking, I replied, then pointed across the room at a metal swinging door. Look, there's the door to the kitchen. Finding our way through the sea of tables and chairs, we reached the door and stopped in front of it. I turned back to the others. All right, cross your fingers. We find something, guys.
Woo! Whoop. Taking a deep breath, I put my hand to the metal and pushed.
My eyes shot down at the radio in my hand, my breath catching in my throat. It felt like someone had just poured a bucket of ice water down my back. That wasn't the captain's voice. That wasn't any of my crew's voices. For a moment, I debated saying nothing. Then I slowly pressed down on the transmit button. My throat had gone as dry as cotton. Oh, I said, my voice coming out raspy and ragged. For a few seconds, there was no reply. And then came the voice again. A man's voice, deep and low. Welcome aboard to all of you. My heart began to pump hard in my chest, and my breathing quickened. What the actual fuck, man? I forced myself to hit the button again, forced my voice to come out much calmer than I felt.
Who the hell are you?
We found ourselves in a huge industrial kitchen. Pots and pans of all kinds hung from hooks on the ceiling, and multiple stoves stretched away on the far wall. Fanning out, we began to explore the room, opening cabinets and drawers. Got what looks like flour here, Vinny called, holding up a large white bag. Well, that's something, at least. Continuing on, we pulled out more than a few ingredients, but nothing we could immediately eat. It got worse when we opened a giant fridge and saw nothing but items like butter and milk inside. Damn it, Wyatt suddenly yelled, slamming the fridge closed with a slam. He leaned back against the door, leaning his head back. Vinny spoke softly. Look, man, if they were at port when the storm ripped her away, it stands to reason there might not have been much in the restaurants. We still have the holds. and the meat lockers to go through. At least we found some things. We found ourselves in a huge industrial kitchen. Pots and pans of all kinds hung from hooks on the ceiling, and multiple stoves stretched away on the far wall. Fanning out, we began to explore the room, opening cabinets and drawers. Got what looks like flour here. Vinny called, holding up a large white bag. Well, that's something. At least. Continuing on, we pulled out more than a few ingredients, but nothing we could immediately eat. It got worse when we opened a giant fridge and saw nothing but items like butter and milk inside. Damn it! Wyatt suddenly yelled, slamming the fridge closed with a slam. He leaned back against the door, leaning his head back. Vinny spoke softly. Look, man, if they were at port when the storm ripped her away, it stands to reason there might not have been much in the restaurants. We still have the holds and the meat lockers to go through. At least we found some things. The sound of a piano beginning to play, and Wyatt's eyes snapped open, and he glared at the man. Oh yeah, that's always just like you, Vin. You've always got to try and cheer people up. When you're not talking shit about things that have no merit. I realized the situation must have been eating heavily at him, and it was finally bursting out. Vinny narrowed his eyes and took a step towards him, clenching his fists. Hey, fuck you, man. At least I'm not the dumbass who thinks about robbing a ship when we should be searching for food. And the two of them began to shout at each other, and their voices kind of filling up the room and bouncing off the metal walls. I shot a glance at Will, who wore a helpless expression on his face. Finally, it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore.
Shut up! Both of you. I screamed out at the top of my lungs, feeling my own anger flare up at their petty squabbling.
I stood there, breathing in deeply, as the two went dead silent, turning to look at me with slightly astonished looks on their faces. I'm not someone who yells often. Usually I'm quiet and calm. And when I yell, people take notice. I mean, for a few moments, there was nothing but silence in the kitchen as we all stared at each other. Looks of shame and guilt fell over Wyatt and Vinny's faces, and I saw them open their mouths to speak, likely to apologize. But whatever words they might have said died away as a sound suddenly sprang up behind us. Back through the metal door. God, please don't let it happen again. Let them be there. That wasn't the sound that caused all of our faces to go pale, though. That made the blood in my veins turn to ice and a gasp to escape my lips. No, that was because, along with the piano, came the sounds of people talking and laughing softly. Occasionally, the sound of cutlery or glasses being picked up and put down punctuated in between. My breaths began to come in short, ragged gasps as I slowly turned to look at the swinging door. Vinny was the one who spoke first, his voice fairly above a whisper. The fuck? I turned back to look at him. His mouth hung wide open, his lower lip trembling slightly. The sight frightened me more than the sounds emanating from back the way we'd come. Vinny may seem to his profession for her, but her son professions, certainly appearances, and what is you a prison to? And that's when I realized everything had gone dead silent.
The sounds of the piano and people no longer came from the other side of the door. It was as if they'd never even been there in the first place. Turning, I saw the others had realized it as well. Wyatt suddenly strode forward, pushing past me and slamming his shoulder into the door. Flew open, softly hitting the wall behind it with a thunk, revealing the empty restaurant as empty as it had been when we'd entered. For a moment, he simply stood there as we gathered behind him and looked out. Then he took 2 steps into the room. No, there's no fucking way, he softly muttered to himself. He swung around, an almost wild look in his eyes. I mean, you all heard that too, right? Slowly, we nodded. His eyes darted around as he looked at the floor. Yeah, that's freaking impossible. We're alone on this shit, but there were fucking people out here. People talking and shit. There was a fucking piano player. And he suddenly swung around, raising his arms and screaming into the empty room. What the fuck is going on?
The 3 of us slowly left the kitchen. Vinny went to stand beside Wyatt, trying to calm him down. But I could see that the experience had, for lack of a better phrase, royally fucked up the man's brain. And that wasn't even half as terrifying as what I saw yesterday. And the thought made me snap my head up and look around the restaurant, half expecting to see the shadowy figures emerging from the corners. But nothing stirred. The radio on my hip squawked, "Nate, come in right now." Over. I reached down, trying to steady myself. I took a deep breath and found the walkie-talkie. "I'm here. What's up?" "Yeah."
The man's voice came again. I noted with a pang of surprise that there was a trace of anger in it. "Wherever your team is, get the fuck up to the radio room. Now."
I looked up from the radio, seeing that everyone had turned to look at me. I saw the same expressions of confusion and worry as I must have had on my face. I hit the button again. "We're on our way." Sparing a last look around the restaurant, I motioned for the others to follow as I hurried for the hallway. "So, you're telling me that none of you managed to get inside the radio room and rip out the microphone?" the captain demanded, the veins in his neck bulging out from barely disguised rage. Everyone stood in front of the radio room, which now hung wide open, the metal door swinging slightly, letting out soft. I looked inside, seeing the ancient setup sitting along the left wall of the room. My eyes ran over all the equipment, stacked neatly on top of each other, finally coming to rest on the place where the microphone used for transmitting radio calls stood. I should say where it should have stood. Instead, the space lay there, and I saw that it hadn't been gently pulled out of the system either. The frayed and snapped wires hung from the jack still hooked into the radio, showing someone had ripped it out with great force. I finally found my voice.
No. None of us would ever do that, not where we want to get off this ship. He shot a glare at all of us and shook the keys in his hand for emphasis.
So you expect me to believe that while we went to hunt for these, that the room just happened to unlock itself and the microphone just happened to tear itself out and walk away? Vinny spoke up. "Look, Cap, Nate's telling the truth. You were nowhere near here, and none of us would sabotage rescue like this." The man's eyes snapped up to look at him. I saw Spencer shoot an accusatory look at us. "Then, where exactly were you? Considering that the captain called you over 20 minutes ago and told you to meet up with us right away." A wave of confusion washed over me. "What the hell are you talking about, Spence?" I asked. He rolled his eyes at me. Come on, dude. Don't give me that confused look bullshit. The captain radioed you and said we found the keys. When you asked him if your force should meet up right away, he said yes.
Then you
and said that you guys were on your way and you'd meet us here. A mixture of shock and further confusion began to rise in me as I saw Wyatt and Vinny exchange puzzled looks. No, that ain't right. Wyatt finally said, made ask that question, all right, but when the captain replied, he told us to keep going and search the restaurant for food and supplies. The captain turned an incredulous eye on Wyatt. What restaurants? Nobody ever said anything about restaurants to me. I just said, try and find some food and supplies. Everyone began to argue, but the sound was drifting away from my ears as my mind raced. I just supplies. A shiver shot up my spine as another dot connected, and I never said anything about the restaurant when I replied to him. He was the one who was slammed into me like a truck, and I felt all the blood drain from my face as the simple but terrifying conclusion came to the surface. That wasn't the captain. Everyone stopped arguing to stare at me. What? Ander asked, seeming confused. I slowly turned to look at the three who'd been with me, quietly repeating myself. That wasn't the captain who was talking to us. I saw the realization slam into Wyatt and Vinny's faces, saw their faces turn as pale as mine was. Oh, fuck no, Wyatt whispered, his eyes beginning to frantically dart around in their sockets. Somebody want to explain to me just what the hell you're saying, the captain demanded. But I didn't answer. I stared at the shocked and frightened faces of my crewmates. I stared at my two crewmates. I forced my voice out in a squeak. Where's Will? Everyone went silent as they began to look around. Then they began to call his name. And finally, everyone began to run around, searching for our missing friend. Spencer dashed up the stairs to the bridge, returning later to confirm it was deserted. Panic began to well up inside me as we moved from the bridge back down to the promenade deck. The guy was here not even 5 minutes ago. How the hell did he slip away? Will, I heard the captain call as he led the way to the main lounge, which stood as empty as it had when we left. He turned around, a look of panic on his face. Where the hell did he go? He exclaimed. As he continued to run to the other end of the room, a thought slowly began to push forward in my mind. For the life of me, I still can't explain why it came to me. But the more it persisted, the more I became convinced I was right. The veranda grill, I shouted out. Everyone turned to look at me. Realizing most of them didn't know what I meant, I scabbed towards the aft section of the ship. The restaurant we went to, Wyatt and Vinny's face changed as their minds clicked. Moments later, the three of us were racing down the hallways, the others struggling to keep up. We took the stairs down to the restaurant deck, 2 at a time, the marble steps threatening to fling our feet out from under us. In reaching a landing, we sprinted past the purser's office and down the hall. I didn't even spare a glance at the still open porthole. I saw you don't have a man, but I didn't look at anything until we reached the entrance to the veranda rail, where I stopped dead in my tracks. Would you stop running? Captain began, but his voice died away as he heard it as well. Everyone stood as still and silent as a statue, listening. There were coming from inside the restaurant, just out of sight around a corner. I felt my pulse quicken and my heart begin to pound again. The first voice I instantly recognized as Will's. The man's snorting laughter was unmistakable. But it was the second voice, a woman's voice that for yet another time that day froze my blood in my veins. So Like Will's voice, that voice spoke too softly for me to be able to make out any specific words. But it was loud enough. I was able to make out one specific detail. The woman spoke with a clear British accent.
What the actual
Andrew managed out. I slowly turned to look at the camera.
His face had turned white as a sheet, and I saw his lower lip quiver slightly. Then it set, and he strode forward.
Captain, no, I whispered, reaching out to snag his arm. But he tore himself out of my grip and walked into the restaurant.
Instantly, the voices stopped speaking, and he simply stood there, staring at something out of sight. Then he gestured for us to come and join him. We all walked quickly to stand next to him. The restaurant was empty, looking exactly as it had when we left. With one exception, at a table near to the piano, Will sat with his back to us. He didn't turn around as we entered, simply continued to sit and stare at the wall. Everyone exchanged a look. And then the captain led us over to him. As we approached him, I suddenly became aware of a smell which hung in the restaurant, one which was impossible to miss. Perfume? It grew stronger as we stepped next to him, and for a moment, I was terrified that we'd see him dead. His mouth wrenched open in a silent, unending scream. Instead, to our surprise, a happy, content smile adorned his face. His eyes were glazed over, almost as if he were drunk or hypnotized. Will, at his words, he swung his head to look at all of us.
Oh, hey guys. He said, his voice sounding almost like a character in a cartoon who'd just been struck by Cupid's.
Wyatt spoke up. Dude, where'd you go? He scared the hell out of us. Will shrugged his shoulders. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I just met the most wonderful woman. He let out a contented sigh. The woman of my dreams for sure. A chill ran up my spine at his words. What woman? I managed out. He smiled. Her name's Diana. She's an actress, a singer, so intelligent and interesting. He sighed again, quote, God, what a woman. And he turned more towards us, exposing the other side of his face. If I hadn't felt so mentally fried, I might have gasped. There was a red lipstick mark on Will's right cheek, the kind you get when a woman wearing it kisses you. It stood out clear as day, and even from this distance, I could see it still looked. Will's smile grew. She likes me, you know, he declared, looking like the happiest man in the world. In any other situation, it'd be a sight that would warm my heart and make me happy for the man. In this situation, it scared the ever-loving shit out of me. Okay, this is too fucking creepy, Spencer finally said, his voice trembling slightly as he looked around the restaurant. You're not kidding, man, I silently said. The captain turned to us. Worry, now clearly etched on his face. Does anyone know what the hell is going on? He asked. It's time to come clean and tell him. Tell all of them the truth. I forced myself to speak. As much as I wish I didn't. I think I do. Everyone turned to me. I took a deep breath, then I began to speak. I told them everything. About all the things you guys said, the things they denied. About the horrifying things I saw in the darkened hallway yesterday. And about what the four of us experienced not even half an hour ago, right in this very restaurant. As I spoke, I saw some of my crewmates' face go pale. Others seemed to fight what I was saying. I saw Spencer and Andrew didn't believe a word I said, or at least didn't want to. But I saw that the captain did. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, The captain spoke. I'm not entirely sure. I believe all of this, that this is the actual Queen Elizabeth and we're aboard an actual ghost ship. But this, he gestured to Will's still smiling face, and the lipstick on and in his face.
Hi.
It is all I need to see to make up my mind. He looked over at me. We have over a week and a half's food and water left. We're going to gather it up and lower one of the lifeboats. We're going to row the fuck away from the ship as fast as we can. And we're going to pray we make it back to land. At his words, Will's face suddenly turned worried. No, I don't want to leave, he said. Not after meeting Diana. I want to stay. The captain grabbed Will by the arm and hoisted him. Frankly, son, I don't give a damn what you want. We're leaving now. The younger man began to protest and struggle, trying to wrench himself out of his grasp. But the captain was stronger, and he pulled him towards the exit. He was almost shouting as we entered the hallway. Get the fuck off me. I don't want to fucking go back to that shitty, fucked up world that's 2023. I want to stay. She said I could stay, that my dream to stay forever in the 1950s could be real. I felt a chill at his words, but continued following the captain. We'd just reached the bottom of the stairs when a huge vibration surged up through the floor into our feet. It was so strong that I nearly fell on my ass. What the hell was that? Vinny spoke the same words aloud. The hell was that? A new sound began filtering up from beneath our feet. A deep, low-pitched hum that slowly began to intensify. I suddenly saw the captain's face pale even farther than it already had.
No, he breathed, then began tearing up the stairs, dragging Will behind him.
As we followed, I suddenly realized why he reacted the way he did. When I was a little child in the 90s, I traveled aboard a cruise ship with my aunt and uncle. And I clearly remembered the noise the giant engines made as they powered up before we left port. And the engines are starting. Everyone raced for the nearest door to the outside deck. I prayed that I was wrong, that the ship would still be dead in the water when we emerged outside. I wasn't. When we emerged on deck into the fading light, it was to see that the ship had begun moving, accelerating far quicker than I thought such a huge ship ever could. The water at the stern stretched out behind us in a foam, churned up by the ship's huge propellers. As we stood on the deck, I felt a sinking, hopeless feeling fall over me. We can't escape in the lifeboat now. We'll be sucked under and torn apart. Slowly, silently, everyone turned away from the sight, unsure looks in their faces, except for Will's, who wore a grinning, ecstatic look. We're back in our cabins now. We've partnered up, each having 3 or 4 people per room. Nobody wants to be alone now. The captain took Will into his room. He refuses to let him out of his sight.
The doors are firmly locked, though I doubt after what I've seen if they truly want in, they'll find a way.
And the fire axes we brought into the rooms with us won't do a damn bit of good. Somehow, the others have fallen asleep. Spencer and Andrew on the giant bed. Wyatt on the floor with a blanket and pillow. I think I'm the only one still awake. This ship doesn't want us to leave. Enough to fire up its own engines and take off for where? I don't know. I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen to us. I want to ask you what we should do now, but I don't know if any of you would have any idea of what to do in a situation like this, right? So and yet I have to. It's the only shred of hope I have left. So please, what should we do? How can they even attempt to stop this ship? How in the fuck can we defend ourselves against things that are already dead? And what the hell is happening to Will? What did that woman that he spoke of die on as? What did she do to him? I was about to finish. But I have to tell you of two final things. Two things that scare me almost more than anything that's happened today. The first is that I hear not music over the intercom, but actual live music filtering into the door and walls. It's an old song, and one I recognize. The song my grandmother used to listen to constantly. A big band song called In the Mood by Glenn Miller. Worse is that I hear voices, I hear laughter,
And occasionally I hear screaming.
but that's not the part that scares me the most, that fills me with an existential dread. As I was sitting here typing, something was forced under the door. And when I flicked down my flashlight with shaking fingers and aimed it, I saw one of those programs, like the one I'd found yesterday. And when I went over to it, though, I saw it was different. A smiling cartoon octopus stared up at me from the cover. One that was playing a trumpet and violin, its tentacles holding the same objects that had been on the other program. And when I flipped it open with shaking hands, I saw two things that made me want to scream. The first was the date in the upper right-hand corner, Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. The second was what was on the left-hand page under the notices bulletin. We would like to welcome aboard our newest passengers, Gabriel Lerner, Wyatt Strosky, Vincent Gaetano, William Jenkins, Andrew Weber, Spencer Michaels, and Nathan Rogers. We hope you enjoy your stay with us. God help us.